Level 2 traders actually matter this wipe. Why? Because normally the flea is so powerful you can leapfrog over the trader offerings and get up to around level 3 vendors simply using the marketplace instead. But this wipe, we don't have the flea for another 8 days or so from the creation of this video, so I'll be showing you the best weapons and ammo to look out for once you start to hit around level 15 and get those traders leveled up. So first we're going to start with Prapor, and Prapor has one of my favourite guns at level 2 traders, which is this, the VSK. This is kind of like a better version of the 9A91 that you got on Prapor 1, and the reason why you couldn't really use this was because the ammo was quite bad. The VSK on Prapor level 2 comes with the added bonus of on the ammunition page, you also get SP5. SP5 is considerably better than the starter ammo, and this one has 71 damage and 28 pen, which makes it kind of analogous to M855 or PS for the 556 and the 545 weapons, except it deals a hell of a lot more damage. So this thing is going to punch really, really hard. The only thing you do need to bear in mind with this is that the time to kill through class 4 armor to the thorax is quite high because 28 pen isn't that good against class 4. Not everyone is running class 4 yet, because the only time that you get it really consistently is once you get to Ragman 2 and then complete audit like I put in my previous video, so really beeline towards that if you can. But basically against anybody who's not running class 4 armor, or if their armor is not completely full durability, SP5 will completely shred them. One of the beautiful things about the VSK as well is that it is only 54k. It is suppressed integrally, so you don't need to get an extra suppressor or anything. So for 54,000, this is basically a steal. Suppressors usually cost about 20,000 rubles, roughly at the bare minimum. So this means that you could think about it like the gun being 35k and the suppressor being 20k. That's really cheap compared to all the other weapons across Escape from Tarkov. Now, there are some downsides to the VSK. You only have 20 round magazines, which actually has been alleviated a little bit because of the nerf that this took last wipe. These started off at 900 RPM, but they are now 700. This means that the fire rate actually makes the recoil more handleable than it used to be, and you don't run out of ammo anywhere near as quickly. I actually prefer the VSK at 700 RPM. Obviously the VSS, the AS Val, and the SR3M, you want to keep them at that 900 so you get the tasty time to kill. But when you're playing at level 2 traders, you don't really need it to be that insane. You just want to be able to hit your shots nice and accurately, and that's exactly what 700 RPM lets you do. You can't do a great deal to the actual gun. The B3 mount isn't purchasable at level 2 traders. You have to get to Skier level 3 to get that. To put a scope on this thing, you need to use the side rail mount. There's a couple that you can choose from. Some are better than others, but the one that's probably the best is the Cobra, because you can stick a side mounted tactical device on it like a TBL, which helps improve your point fire, or a flashlight like the Clash or the X400, whatever it is that you have in your stash. Worst case scenario, you run a 25mm ring mount and then one of these WF501Bs, the Ultra Fires, just so you can see what you're doing. And then you can put, whatever you have access to on the top here. There is another alternative on the side mount, which is either the EKP directly, which is all right. I don't mind this one too much. Or the one that I've been running, which is the OKP7. This one sits nice and low to the gun and does feel good to use, but obviously in this configuration, you don't get a tactical device. This is how I've been running it actually, and it's felt okay because I'm not using point fire that much with this particular weapon, and I'm not using a flashlight on it either, and I'm using it pretty much in ADS mode exclusively. But again, it depends on what you want to do. You can add that Cobra on if you do feel like you need a flashlight or a laser attached to this gun. So the VSK has been absolutely shredding for me. I think this is great. The other offerings on Prapor, I have always said I don't really think that these things matter too much now. The AK-74N, this version, that version, this version, and that version. There's loads of different ones because the baby AK exists at Prapor level 1. The modding is roughly the same. These ones take Bastion rails rather than Pilgrims on the little version. And if you want a slightly better accuracy, like these are 1.99 MOA, and I think the baby AK is more like 4 because you're shooting long range and you want to attach, say, a PSO scope to the side of this dovetail, then sure, go for one of these longer AKs. But I don't think this really is much of a power spike. Having access to the AKM for cash is pretty useful. This is decent if you've got a lot of PS ammo for 7.62, because PS is pretty good with 35 pen. It's one of the better ammos that you can actually get access to. However, you can't buy it until you get to Prapor level 3. Fortunately, you can get FMJ. This is 26 pen, which isn't bad for a trader ammo. Yes, the recoil on these guns is quite high, but I tend to use FMJ as like a stacking round underneath other stuff. So I'll either be using T45M or PS over the top of FMJ. And if you do go down into FMJ, 26 pen is still respectable. It's not actually awful. Now, there is an interesting thing about the AKMS now. There is a new buffer tube here, the AKMSP. I just want to point this out. I don't think you can get this yet. There's no offers for it. I don't think it's on the traders at the moment. There is technically this buffer tube there that does allow you to put on, Western style stocks onto this. So just a random point of note that the AKMS is not stuck with the wireframe stock anymore. Now, another gun that I think actually is really good, I've not used this one yet in this wipe because there are only so many raids and there are so many guns in Tarkov, but one that caught my eye was the Kedabi, because this one has always been decent. It's got a 900 RPM fire rate, which is really good for getting those headshots. Yes, there is no way to get a sight on this, which is a little unfortunate, but the irons are quite good on this gun. But the thing that makes it decent, again, is ammunition that you get access to. Prapor has this one here, which is the 9x18 PBM. It only has 40 damage, so it's a little bit low, but it does have 28 pen, which again puts it on par with PS for the 545 weapons, which is pretty good. This is one of the ones, the reason why the damage is low is because it will actually go with the Kedabi. There's a separate one here, PMM, PSTM. This has got 24 pen, which is a little bit worse, but 58 damage, which is a hell of a lot better, but this will only go in the Clin. So if you want to use the Clin and you want to use the 58 damage round instead with 24 pen, then you could go for PSTM. If you want to use the Kedabi, which is my preference just because it's easier at hitting headshots, then you can go for the PBM bullet instead, which, as I said, is a bit low damage, but it will get the job done, and the penetration is up there with SP5, M855, 545 PS, that kind of thing. So I think this is actually a goer. If you like that kind of gameplay and you want a fast SMG that's actually really quite cheap, then I think the Kedabi could be a good one. There's one other one that I want to point out, the Mosin. You know, take it or leave it. If you like the Mosin, then you'll still like the Mosin regardless of what they do to the changes in this game. But the SV98 Barter starts saving up your Apollos and your Marlboro Sigs. And the reason for this is that when you get onto Peacekeeper's first set of tasks after you complete Friend from the West, you get fishing gear, and you have to stash an SV98 sniper rifle in the boat on shoreline. There's lots of people doing this task. It's one of the first shoreline tasks that you get. And there's a ton of people who are dying trying to plant the SV98. Well, you only get given one from Peacekeeper, and there's no other way to buy it early on. This is a bit of a problem because of the way that the flea market has gone now. So if we go over to Prapor again, go and have a look at the SV98, you can see that the purchases only come later. This one comes with the task completion, this one comes at loyalty level 3 with Jaeger, which is quite high. So the only other alternative you have is kill somebody else who's doing the task, which is maybe why there's so many people camping it, or you go and do this barter. So save up your Apollo Sigs, save up your Marlboros, there's ones that you need to hand into Mechanic, but over the top of that, save up a few more, and that'll give you, something in pocket to be able to actually go and plant this again, just in case you lose it and you do die on the first attempt. So just looking through the ammo, because this has implications for some of the other weapons, you can now buy PST. So if you're a USEC, you can just dump all of your M882. You don't need to bother with that 18 pen ammo anymore. You can go up to the 20 pen of PST, which is quite nice. Once you're done with Jaeger's quests, where you have to find all the food for him, you can now start using your 2 Shonka cans to get BT for 545, which is pretty powerful. It's one of those things where once you've actually got a stack of BT, you probably do want to use the AKs for a little bit. You still can't actually buy this yet, but once you've got a small stash of it, then you can start top loading it over other stuff you've got. I've still got, PP and a few other different bullets for 545, so it's fairly viable because it's one of the most plentiful bullets you find in raid, and then putting BT over the top means that you'll even deal with class 4 armor, which is really powerful at this point in the wipe. We mentioned about SP5 already, and FMJ, as well as the Clin ammo and the Keda for the PBM and the PSTM. And so let's move on to Skier 2. Now Skier 2 is quite limited. He's got a couple of different guns. I don't really like the semi-auto AKs. I think they're really, really expensive for what they are. The only point to note, I guess, about the short one is it comes with the PWS CQB. You can't buy early. This is a really good compensator, minus 11%. You can only get it on this build. It comes by default with it. So in theory, you could nab this and put it on something else. Just to note, it is the 545 version. So this doesn't fit with 556. This goes with the 545 AKs. So you can stick it on something else that Prapor has if you need to. Other than that, I don't really like the rest of the selection. The MCX would be an interesting one, except you need GPXs and 1G phones as well as normal G phones. It's just kind of hard to get this barter done. Maybe have a play with it if you do find some good ammo. I've been finding CVJ. You can actually see over here I've got CVJ, which is really good with 43 pen. So again, this will handily deal with anything, even up to class 5 armor, to be honest. It's really good with 58 damage. But the difficulty of getting the MCX and then probably modding it means it is likely not worth it. The RFB is interesting. Yes, you do need gas analyzers early, and you do need 3 of them. Maybe I've been getting lucky, but duffel bags, filing cabinets, gas analyzers kind of seem to be everywhere. And with the RFB, I did point this out in another video, but there is now this new quad rail 3-inch mount, and you can also get this from Skier 2 as well. So you can stick this quad rail mount on, and then you can use a laser or a flashlight. So you can now actually use the RFB and CQB without kind of feeling like you're screwing yourself over. You can obviously put on a regular vertical foregrip as well, and then the mounting options for scopes is really whatever you have access to. Anything will do, and then you can use the RFB. A lot of people still have M80 saved up because you get a little bit of that. I can't remember exactly with which edition, but I know definitely EOD gets some M80 because you get an M700. I tend not to use that and sell it, but I keep the M80, so you could use that in the RFB. You do also get TCW SP from Skier himself. This is 30 pen, which is no joke at this point in the wipe. 85 damage is a lot, so the RFB might be a go if you have spare gas analyzers lying around, which you might do. Right, on to Peacekeeper. Peacekeeper is pretty expensive for stuff. You do finally have the ability to buy an M4. I wouldn't do this. $631 is nearly 100,000 rubles, and there's a better way to get the M4 if you actually want one once you reach level 20. So in the meantime, if you want to use 5.56, I would just use the G36C. It's very similar in performance to the M4. It's actually probably slightly improved because of the lower fire rate on the G36, the increased ergonomics, and the fact the recoil stat itself is just a little bit better. So I'd go for the G36C. I think that's really good. I've used this in lots of other previous wipes, not in this one so much, but I've used it plenty in the past. Ammo is still an issue for this gun, obviously, but lots of people still have M855 lying around. Also, you find M856A1 in places like USEC Camp on Woods, where you need to go for various quests, so look around for it. You could probably find some 55A1, some SOST, maybe M855 itself, and also 56A1 as you're just going around the map, which you can then use with the G36. We talked a minute ago about PST from Prapor, and you do have the Uzi Pro pistol and the MPX on Peacekeeper. The Uzi Pro pistol basically acts like an MP9N. If you like the MP9N, you'll like the Uzi Pro. And what you can do here is, if you have Mechanic 2, you can go and get this thing, which is the threaded barrel. This is this one here, the Pike Arms 114mm threaded barrel. This one is on Mechanic 2, and what you can do with it is you can stick this on, and then on here you can add the SRD9. There's a couple of different suppressors, but these ones are all barters, so I'm going to avoid them for the time being. The SRD9 is on Peacekeeper. Expensive, it's about 30,000 rubles, so it is a lot. You can add, a vertical foregrip underneath, and then you can just run around shredding people. To be honest, at 55 vertical recoil, you're really just wanting to press this into somebody and kill them that way. So the Uzi Pro pistol can be fun. I've not really used it myself in this wipe again. 32 round magazines are available as well from Peacekeeper 2. So this is, it's a viable SMG. If you like the MP9N, it's almost the same gun. Then we have the MPX. The MPX I usually avoid early wipe because of difficulties with modding, but I've noticed this wipe you can actually get access to some of these things on Peacekeeper 2, which is pretty early. So if we go and have a look at some of the different barrels, we've now got the SD versions, which is the 6.5 inch, which is the standard one. This only comes from Mechanic 2, so if you don't have that, you're going to want to avoid it, but maybe go for the very shortest one, which is the Ronin Arms 4.75 inch barrel. And if we go and look at that, that is on Peacekeeper 2 for $34, which is extremely cheap. And on top of that, it's got a specialist suppressor, which is the 8-inch Ronin suppressor, the Ronin Arms 8-inch suppressor here, and that's $150, which is about 22,000 rubles, which isn't too bad. And you can stick that on a Peacekeeper 2 and make yourself an MPX SD, just a Peacekeeper 2 without doing any extra quests, which is pretty cool. Add a vertical foregrip, you've got 37 vertical recoil and 75 ergo. You don't need to do anything else with this. This is an insane weapon. Just put a red dot on the top and start popping faces. I think that's actually a really good shout. I might start using this in some of my raids, especially if you pick up a little bit of, for example, AP 6.3 in raid. We now have the ability to buy the UMP in cash. I think this is probably cheaper than going through fence. The knives and whatnot end up costing about 40k, whereas this is more like 30. The UMP, as I said before in my level 1 traders video, it's extremely easy to mod. Foregrip on the bottom, laser on the side, red dot on the top. It's annoying that you can't get rid of this front sight, which is a little shame, but it doesn't really matter too much. And the beauty of this is that Peacekeeper gets the match FMJ bullet, which is, if you like laser match, then you'll like this even more. 72 damage and 25 pen. This makes it adequate against class 3 armor, and 72 damage hits really, really hard for a bullet like this. I actually think the VSK probably is still a little bit better. The 9A91 was better than the UMP Barter, and now the VSK is probably better than the UMP here because it's suppressed and whatnot. But you get slightly bigger magazines with this, 25s instead. So if you want to use the UMP, then you can. So moving on to Mechanic 2. So this is the highest level one at level 20. His are mostly revolving around barters as usual. The OPSKS one is not too bad. This build is pretty good. It's only got 70 recoil, which is insane for semi-auto running 7.62x39. If you pick up T45M, PS in raid, maybe even something better than that, PP or BP, I've got a little bit of BP myself, you will just absolutely dominate people with this gun. The only thing is it's a bit difficult to suppress. You can't really get access to the suppressors early. You've either got this Hexagon SKS, which is on Skier level 3, or using the weapon tuning thread adapter, we've got things like the DTK4M, which again is only on Skier 3. So if you do find a suppressor for these guns, then this can be pretty good. You can put the DTK1 on it to reduce the recoil even further, which comes from Skier 1, but you're going to be going loud with this, and that can go down to 56 vertical recoil. Like this is crazy. So if you don't mind going loud, then this is fine, and you can get access to weapons parts pretty easily in the hideout by decomposing SKSs from Prapor, the regular ones with the kind of brown wood, or by decomposing a VPO 209, which is the semi-auto 366 AK. You could do both of those in the hideout depending on which auxiliary tools you have to get either 1 or 2 weapons parts, and then buy the SKS from Mechanic. So use a little bit of your workbench time to go and make this. So this is a good option if you like semi-auto. Again, you can put like a PSO on this. You can buy PSOs on Prapor 1. So there are ready-to-go optics that just fit straight to the gun, and you can put lasers on it and stuff so you're also able to fight in CQB. Pretty neat stuff. Now, we said before, don't buy the Peacekeeper M4 because it's not worth it. And the reason why is because on Mechanic 2, you have this here. This is the lower, and you can do funky things with the lower. So this is only 18,000 rubles. And the way that you can build yourself an M4 for much cheaper than 100k from Peacekeeper is we go over to Skill 1, and then we bring up an ADAR. This is like the oldest trick in the book, and this is the M4 DAR. And what you do is you go and buy yourself a lower from Mechanic, you buy an ADAR from Skier, and you drag the upper from the ADAR over onto the lower from Mechanic. It's very, very straightforward, and you'll end up with basically a gun that looks exactly the same as the ADAR, except it's got an M4 lower. So this thing will be on full auto because it is an M4 now, and you'll end up with an ADAR lower just left over. In its default configuration, the ADAR is actually not much worse than a standard M4 at all. They're basically the same gun. It looks like this one has higher ergo by 8, but that's actually just the difference in magazines. This one's -3, and this one is +5. So the ergo is exactly the same, and the recoil is also identical. So you're not really losing anything. If you're not going to be modding out an M4 loads, which at level 2 traders, you're unlikely to anyway, using it kind of stock, which is also possible these days because of the recoil system, then you may as well just have the wooden M4. And you could do that using Mechanics lower. So this is really handy. Also, when it starts to break, you know, if you shot it a lot and you've kept it for a few raids, you can just replace everything over. Same methodology works for things like the SCAR, the AK-74N, and the VPO 209 if you've fired them a lot, but to be honest, I tend not to use these lowers particularly. The M4 SOT mod is really powerful if you can find enough pro kills, so keep those around because you can get an LCAN and a suppressor for that. The AUG I wouldn't bother with at this point, and outside of that, there's really nothing else that's that great down here. Maybe if you have WD-40s, you could swap these over for an RMR, or maybe on this one, the Glock, you can get yourselves a fast fire and a suppressor for G-phones and PCBs. But I tend to just be keeping these things at the moment because you need a lot of them for quests. Over on his ammunition, he's actually pretty limited. He gives you another set of PST, but we already had this on Prapor 2, so we don't really care. We're not using the MP7 anyway, and Subsonic sucks these days because it only has 23 pen. R37X is the flesh round for the P90, but that's kind of hard to buy right now because it's locked behind a barter only. And 50 AE copper solid isn't even the best bullet for the Deagle. It's got 33 pen, so I guess it's all right, but it's not one that I would typically use because I'm either using FMJ or nothing when I'm using the Deagle. So with that said, we're going to move over to Mr. Jaeger. And on Jaeger 2, this is a lot of shotguns. It's not too much here. You do have the VPO 101. If you are desperate to use 7.62 NATO and you don't have enough spare gas analyzers to get the RFB, then you can use the Vepr Hunter instead. Unfortunately, you'll probably only be able to use the 5-round magazines, which I find really tough. The 10-rounders only unlock at Jaeger 3. I just find that really, really hard. You can also only get access to the suppressor at Skier 3. So I just find this gun difficult to use, honestly. Like, the Vepr Hunter has just not been good for a very, very long time in this game. Outside of that, then you've got lots of shotguns. The MP153 is probably the best. Setup comes quite early in the quests now. Once you've completed a couple of Skiers ones, then you get access to setup, and the 153 is probably one of the better guns for doing that with, so being able to buy it in cash isn't a bad option. The 155 is also not too bad either. Maybe slightly better, arguably, if you're not going to be modding it too much, because they've got similar recoil, and the 155 just has better ergo out of the box. Not as heavy, not as cumbersome. He does have some interesting ammunition, which can be good. He's got this new dangerous game slug, but this is bartering for a sodium. I'm probably not going to use this in the TOS, but it's funny if you do want to try it. He has 366 TKM EKO. This supercharges the 209 and the 215 bolt action and makes certain quests much easier, like Tarkov Shooter 3, where you're having to get short-range bolty kills. I did that with a VPO 215 the other day myself with this, because although it doesn't kill in one shot to anywhere other than the head with 73 damage, it does have 30 pen. So it will deal with all armors up to the tier 4s, which is nice, and that gives you some decent options. It also hits really hard with 73 damage, so out of a 209 on semi, then you can do pretty well with this. I'm not really a semi enjoyer, so I haven't used that much, but it worked quite well in the VPO bolt action. There's a bunch of slugs that we've got: Palava 6Us, Copper, Superformance, and FTX Custom Light. Honestly, between these, I would choose either Superformance if you wanted to go really, really fast. You just got to watch the zeroing because it'll probably shoot high. Copper is kind of in between, goes fast, has really high accuracy, but has a little bit better pen. Or FTX Custom Light, and you want the most pen, but somewhere in between on bullet velocity. I don't use slugs for shotguns that much, but the option is there if you want to. Outside of this, the only other one I think is good is 1270 Piranha. This is the 12 gauge Piranha slug, which is a dart. It's a bit like Flechette. This fires 10 projectiles with 25 damage each with a pen of 24. This actually will shred people. I'm probably going to use this for setup. Early wipe, this will dominate. I might try it today actually for the drop stream, which if you're around and watching this literally today, I'm going to be streaming for 12 hours over on YouTube and Twitch again for the second day in a row. So you might get to see me use some Piranha later. But usually I find setup quite easy to complete with this. So that's pretty much it for Jaeger. Let's go over to Ref. Those people who have Arena, you will have a couple of options on Ref. These are quite a lot of GP coins for like one-off guns. I tend to use my GP coins for permanent things like med cases or grenade cases and things like that. But if you do want to get access to some of this stuff early, you can. I think the two best here probably are either the SR25, because you get the scope and you get the suppressor. And also an SR25 is not easy to come by in raid at this level. Or the RD704, which is basically a meta build. This is pretty much as good as it can get. The Zhukov is insane. This is the meta suppressor. All you need to do is put an M-lock rail on, slap on any of these vertical foregrips that you've got access to, get rid of the sight, put a Bastion on instead, and then stick a sight of your choice on. And then you've got this thing which is 63 ergo and 71 vertical recoil, which is absolutely nuts. The RD704 also fires quite slowly with 600 RPM, so 30 rounders is okay with it. We've got the meta pistol grip, which is kind of insane. So yeah, this one's quite good, but typically I don't use my GP coins on this kind of stuff. Unfortunately, over on Ref, the ammo is just kind of bad. TCW SP, we already had on Skier, so don't waste your GPs. This one is the random letters and numbers P90 ammo, which I've never used, honestly. We've got PS12 for the Ash 12, which is very underwhelming, and FMJ for 545, which is also kind of rubbish. So ignore that stuff, maybe go for the guns, but I think Ref 2 just isn't really that good. So next up, I'll show you a couple of clips from the VSK, which I've been using recently, and it's been working out really well for me. That's a player. I think Frostbite comes and goes. Yeah, it seems like the storm's gone. Yeah, I thought it was the cult circle, but I actually don't think it was. Oh. The loudest click in the world, baby. This dude's hurting, for sure. I'm not sure if he's dead, though. Did I kill him? Ugh. I must have, right? Don't know exactly where he was, but... Where the hell is he? Oh, he's there. I quite like the LBT bag, but it's smaller than mine. What's this guy doing? Oh wait, is he doing the Korovat thing? There's that 8-shot TTK, by the way. Not found in raid. He tried to run, but there was no running. He probably... Okay. Maybe teammates? Yeah, maybe. What was I doing on woods? Oh, I was getting scavs, wasn't I? Like, I've looted the whole camp. I don't need to fight him. thing's a freaking laser beam. It's the classic thing though, like I've got tool sets and stuff, like I've got really important things. I don't really care what they have on them. They might have good stuff, but there might also be a third teammate and I might die. So I feel like I'd rather just kill them, let them go. Like, I'm not even going to loot the bodies. Like, they can't have anything good. They've got some stuff maybe that's... But, like, where have they come from, right? They haven't even got into USEC camp. I was the one in the hotspot farming it, so I feel like I'm very likely to have much better stuff than they have. So, as usual, a big shout out to all my patrons, and as always, have fun in your raids.